They can automate your job. They cannot automate you. A machine can now write the report you used to stay late finishing. A machine can now answer the emails you used to dread opening. A machine can now do in 9 seconds what once took you 9 hours. Sit with that for a moment, because somewhere tonight, someone is staring at their screen, watching software do their job faster than they ever could, and asking themselves a question they never thought they'd have to ask. Am I still needed? Success is predictable. It's not luck, and it's not magic. It's the ability to become someone a machine cannot replace. Here is what nobody is telling you. Your job and your worth are not the same thing. Your title and your value are not the same thing. A task can be automated. A person cannot. They can automate your job. They cannot automate you. We are going to talk about what is actually happening to work right now. Not the fear version, the real version. We're going to talk about what machines are good at and what they are still nowhere close to. We're going to talk about the skill that has outlasted every wave of automation in history, and how you build it starting today. Because the people who panic right now will spend the next 5 years reacting. The people who understand what's happening will spend the next 5 years building something no algorithm can touch. Let's begin. There is a fear moving through offices, warehouses, hospitals, and homes right now. And most people are too embarrassed to say it out loud. The fear that the thing you spent years training to do, the thing that pays your rent, the thing you built an identity around, might simply stop needing you. It is not an irrational fear. It is not something you should be shamed out of feeling. The World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report, released in January 2025, projects that by 2030, the equivalent of 92 million jobs will be displaced by a combination of automation, artificial intelligence, and shifting economic forces. 92 million. That is not a rounding error. That is not a scare tactic from a headline writer. That is the honest math from over 1,000 employers across 55 economies. But here is the number people skip past because it's less dramatic. The same report projects 170 million new jobs created in that same window. Not despite the disruption. Because of it. Net positive of 78 million jobs worldwide. Read that again slowly. Because it matters. The story being sold to you online is simple and terrifying. Machines take jobs. Humans lose. The actual story is more complicated and more honest. Machines take tasks. Some jobs disappear entirely. Other jobs get created that didn't exist 5 years ago. And most jobs, the ones in the middle, get rebuilt around what's left over after the machine takes the parts it's good at. That rebuilding is where you live now. That rebuilding is where I want you to focus. Don't wish the disruption would slow down. Wish you were the kind of person disruption makes more valuable instead of less. Let's talk about what the machines are actually good at. Because clarity kills fear faster than motivation does. Machines are extraordinary at pattern recognition across massive data sets. Give a model 1,000,000 contracts and it will find the clause that's different in 11 seconds. Give it a spreadsheet with 40,000 rows, and it will find the anomaly before you've finished your coffee. Give it the collected medical literature on a rare condition, and it will surface a match a human doctor might never encounter in a career. Because that doctor only sees a few hundred patients a year, and the machine has effectively seen millions. Machines are extraordinary at repetition without fatigue. They do not get bored on the 4,000th data entry tasks. They do not get sloppy at 4 in the afternoon after a bad night's sleep. They do not need a lunch break, a raise, or a reason to stay. Machines are extraordinary at producing a first draft, a rough outline, a summary, a translation, a block of code that mostly works. The starting point that used to take you an hour now takes a few seconds. According to the same Future of Jobs report, AI and data processing technologies alone are expected to create 11 million roles globally by 2030 while displacing 9 million. The jobs most exposed to decline are the ones built almost entirely around exactly those strengths. Roles like cashiers, ticket clerks, administrative assistants, and accountants and auditors are among those employers expect to shrink fastest. Precisely because so much of that work is repeatable pattern matching against structured information. If your job is 100% pattern matching, repetition, and first drafts, I am not going to lie to you and tell you that job is safe. It probably is not, at least not in its current form. But stay with me, because that is not the end of the story. That is the beginning of it. Here is what the machines are still nowhere close to. A machine does not know what your customer actually needs when your customer doesn't know how to say it. A machine cannot sit across from a grieving family and decide, in real time, which words to use and which to hold back. A machine cannot walk into a room where two departments hate each other and rebuild enough trust that they start collaborating again. A machine cannot look a nervous new employee in the eye and decide, on instinct built from 20 years of experience, that this person needs encouragement today instead of correction. A machine does not have skin in the game. It has no reputation to protect, no relationship to preserve, no judgment call to own when things go wrong at 2 in the morning and someone has to decide, right now, with incomplete information, what happens next. That is not a consolation prize. That is the actual job. It always was. The paperwork, the data entry, the repetitive scheduling, the first draft busy work. That was never the valuable part of your work. It was the tax you paid in order to get to do the valuable part. And for the first time in a long time, a lot of that tax is being lifted. Discipline is the bridge between a job title and a career that survives change. That bridge is not built by hoping the disruption skips you. It's built by becoming excellent at exactly the things a machine cannot do, starting with the very next task on your desk. Let's go back in time for a moment, because this is not the first time in human history that a machine showed up promising to make people obsolete. And history has something to teach us if we're willing to listen instead of panic. In the 1970s, banks in the United States began installing a new machine, a box in the wall that could dispense cash and take deposits without a human standing behind a counter. The automated teller machine, the ATM. The assumption at the time, among bank executives, among economists, among the tellers themselves, was straightforward. This machine does the teller's job. The teller's job will disappear. By the mid-1990s, there were hundreds of thousands of these machines installed across the country. And yet, according to research by economist James Besson of Boston University, the number of bank teller jobs in the United States did not collapse. It held roughly steady through that period, and by some measures even grew. Why? Two things happened that almost nobody predicted at the time. First, the ATM cut the number of tellers needed to run an average urban branch from about 20 down to about 13, according to Besson's research covering 1988 through 2004. That made each branch dramatically cheaper to operate. So banks did the obvious thing. They opened more branches. Urban bank branches increased by roughly 43% during this period. Fewer tellers per branch, but a lot more branches. And the job did not vanish. It redistributed. Second, and this is the part that matters most for you tonight, the tasks that were left over for the human tellers became more valuable, not less. When the machine took over counting cash and processing withdrawals, the teller's job shifted toward the parts a machine could not do. Building relationships with small business owners. Understanding a customer's actual financial situation well enough to recommend a product that fit. Solving problems that didn't have a script. The teller became part of what banks started calling a relationship banking team. And that relationship work was worth more to the bank than cash counting ever was. The machine did not eliminate the job. It stripped away the mechanical parts of the job, and left behind, and even amplified, the human parts. Now I want to be honest with you. Because a motivational story only works if it's also a true one. And the ATM story does not end in 2010 the way it's usually told. Bank teller employment did eventually begin a real sustained decline. Not because of the ATM, but because of what came after it. When smartphone banking arrived and let customers deposit checks and check balances from their couch, the relationship tasks that had kept tellers valuable started shrinking too. Because the entire visit to the branch started disappearing for a lot of customers. That is the honest lesson, and it's a more useful one than the tidy version. Automation does not always spare you. Sometimes it takes the mechanical layer and leaves you standing on solid ground for a decade. And sometimes a second wave comes for the ground itself. The people who did best through both waves were never the ones who did the most repetitive version of the job. They were the ones who had built irreplaceable relationships, judgment, and trust along the way. The kind of value that survives even when the tools around it change twice in one career. That is the whole game. Not finding a job that automation will never touch. There may not be one. Finding the parts of your work that stay human no matter how many waves come, and building your identity around those parts instead of the mechanical ones. Don't wish the tools would stop changing. Wish you were building the kind of value that outlasts whichever tool shows up next. Let's talk about what the people actually studying this. Not the panic merchants online, but the researchers surveying over 1,000 real employers, say is becoming more valuable, not less, as automation spreads. For the third report in a row, the single skill employers rank as most essential as analytical thinking. 7 out of every 10 companies surveyed call it essential. Not because machines can't calculate. Because the world these machines are helping build has become more complex, not less. And someone still has to decide which question to ask, which output to trust, and which one to throw away. Right behind it, resilience, flexibility, and agility. The ability to keep functioning and keep growing when the ground under your job shifts. Which, If the last several years have taught us anything, it will keep doing. Then leadership and social influence. The ability to move other people toward a shared goal. Something no model can do. Because leadership isn't information, it's trust. And trust is earned face to face, decision by decision, over time. Then creative thinking. Generating an idea nobody asked for because you noticed a problem nobody else saw yet. Then motivation and self-awareness. The unglamorous discipline of understanding your own patterns well enough to manage them. Notice what's missing from that list. Not one of the top 5 is a technical skill. Not coding. Not data entry. Not operating a piece of software. The top 5 most demanded qualities in the workforce of 2030, according to the people actually doing the hiring, are things a machine has never been able to do, and based on how these systems currently work, is not close to doing. Because these are not information problems. They are human problems, dressed up as job requirements. The report also found that employers expect 39% of workers' core skills to change by 2030. That number sounds alarming until you compare it to the same measurement from previous years. It was 44% in 2023, 57% in 2020, during the pandemic. The rate of change is actually slowing, according to the researchers, in part because more workers, roughly half according to the report, have already gone through some kind of retraining or upskilling. The chaos is not accelerating without end. It is being absorbed, one person who chose to adapt at a time. You are not standing in front of an unstoppable wave. You are standing in front of a door that most people are too afraid to walk through. Which means the ones who do walk through it are about to become disproportionately valuable. Discipline is the bridge between watching the wave and learning to build with it. That bridge gets built one decision at a time, starting with what you choose to learn this month while everyone else is still arguing on the internet about whether any of this is even real. Let me tell you what I think is actually going on beneath all the noise. Because I think most people are asking the wrong question. The question everyone is asking is, will a machine take my job? That is the wrong question. Because it assumes a job is one solid, indivisible thing. It is not. A job is a bundle of tasks. Every job you have ever had is a bundle. Some of those tasks are mechanical, repetitive, rule-based, predictable. And some of those tasks require judgment, relationship, taste, ethics, timing, and trust. The right question is not, will a machine take my job? The right question is, which parts of my job are mechanical? And am I spending my time and my identity on those parts, or on the parts that require me specifically? Because here is the uncomfortable truth. A lot of people have been quietly outsourcing their own value to the mechanical parts of their job for years. Not because a machine forced them to, but because the mechanical parts felt safe, predictable, measurable. You can point to 40 completed reports and say, look what I did today. It is much harder to point to the moment you talked a panicked client off the ledge, or the meeting where your one question reframed the whole project. Or the year you spent quietly becoming the person your team trusted with the decisions nobody else wanted to make. Those contributions don't show up on a spreadsheet. But they are the contributions no machine has ever made, and no machine is currently positioned to make. If you have spent your career hiding inside the mechanical parts of your job because they were comfortable, this is the moment that comfort runs out. Not because you're being punished. Because the floor you were standing on was never the floor that actually held your value. It was just the floor that was easiest to stand on. The greatest investment you will ever make right now is not in learning to use a new piece of software, although you should absolutely do that. It is in becoming the kind of person whose judgment, trust, and presence cannot be extracted from a company without the company losing something it cannot replace with a subscription. Don't wish your job were simpler to automate around. Wish you were harder to automate around. Let's make this practical. Because a video full of ideas with nothing to do at the end of it is just entertainment. And I did not bring you here to entertain you. I brought you here to change how you spend Monday morning. First, go through your actual job, task by task, honestly. Not the job description, the real one. Write down every single thing you do in a normal week. Then mark each task with one letter. M for mechanical, the kind of task built from rules, repetition, and pattern matching. H for human, the kind of task built from judgment, relationship, timing, and trust. Most people have never done this exercise in their entire career. It takes 20 minutes and it will tell you more about your actual risk and your actual opportunity than any article you'll read this year. Second, for every task marked M, ask yourself honestly, could a competent tool already do a version of this today? Not perfectly, a rough version. If the answer is yes, stop treating that task as your identity. Learn the tool, use the tool. Let the tool do it faster than you ever could. And take the hours you get back and reinvest every single one of them into task H. the human column. Third, for every task marked H, get better at it on purpose, not by accident. If your H column includes things like reading a room, de-escalating conflict, building trust with a new client, mentoring someone younger than you, making a hard call under uncertainty, treat those as skills to be trained, the same way you'd train a muscle. Read about negotiation. Study how the best leaders you know actually listen. Ask for feedback on the human parts of your work the way you used to ask for feedback on your technical output. Most people have spent their whole career training their hard skills and leaving their human skills to chance. Reverse that ratio starting this month. Fourth, learn the tools that are reshaping your industry before you are forced to. Not because you owe it to your employer, because the version of you that understands the new tools and still holds the human trust the tools cannot replicate is the version of you that becomes irreplaceable, not despite the disruption, because of it. The people who get hurt worst by every wave of automation in history are never the people who learned the new tool early. They are the people who refused to look at it until it was already standing in their doorway. Fifth, and this is the one people skip because it does not feel productive in the moment. Protect and deepen your actual relationships. Your reputation with your colleagues. Your trust with your clients. Your standing with your team. A machine can write an email in your voice. It cannot show up for someone at the funeral. It cannot remember, unprompted, that your coworker's kid had a big game last night and ask how it went. It cannot build 15 years of somebody trusting your judgment because you were right, and honest, and present, over and over again when it counted. That trust is not sentimental. It is economic. It is the single hardest thing in the modern economy to replace, which makes it the single most valuable thing you can spend the next year building. Character is not built in one quarter. It is built one honest interaction at a time, and it becomes the part of your resume that no algorithm can write for you, and no algorithm can take from you. Let's talk about fear for a moment, honestly, because I don't want to pretend it away. If you are someone whose job is heavily concentrated in the mechanical column, the honest thing to tell you is that the next several years may be genuinely difficult. I am not going to stand here and promise you that everything works out fine if you just believe hard enough. That is not respect. That is a lie dressed up as encouragement. But here is what is also true. The same report that shows 92 million jobs displaced also shows 170 million created. Care economy roles like nursing, counseling, and social work are expected to grow significantly through 2030, driven by aging populations that no software can nurse back to health. Frontline roles like construction, delivery, and food processing are expected to grow in raw numbers larger than almost anything else, because there is no version of the next decade where humans stop needing shelter, food, and physical infrastructure built by human hands and human judgment. The work is moving. It is not vanishing. Moving work requires something from you that standing still never did. It requires you to be willing to learn something new later in life than you expected to be a beginner again at a moment when you thought you'd already earned the right to stop being one. That is uncomfortable. It is also the exact discipline that has separated the people who thrived through every prior wave of automation from the people who got left behind by it. Not intelligence, not luck. The willingness to become a student again. Don't wish this moment in history were easier. Wish you were someone willing to learn again, at whatever age you are right now, for as many times as the world requires it of you. I want to leave you with the thing I think matters most in all of this. Because it's easy to walk away from a video like this thinking the lesson is, learn to code, or learn to prompt an AI model well. And while those are useful skills, they are not the lesson. Tools change. The tool that matters in 5 years probably doesn't exist yet. If you build your entire identity around mastering one tool, you are setting yourself up to feel obsolete again the moment that tool gets replaced by the next one. And it will. The lesson is deeper than any tool. Your value was never really the task. It was always the trust, the judgment, and the humanity you brought to the task. The machine can write the report. It cannot decide, with wisdom, which report actually needed to be written in the first place. The machine can answer the question. It cannot sense that the person asking it needed something gentler than an answer. The machine can generate 1,000 options. It cannot stand behind one of them with the kind of accountability that makes a team trust a leader. They can automate your job, every task inside it, eventually to some degree. That is not a threat you get to opt out of by refusing to look at it. It is simply the direction the next decade is moving. But they cannot automate you. Not your judgment, earned over years of being right and being wrong and learning the difference. Not your character, built one honest choice at a time when nobody was measuring it. Not your relationships, which took real years and real presence to build, and which no subscription can replicate. Not your ability to walk into a room full of uncertainty and make a call anyway, and own it. So if you are afraid tonight, afraid that the thing you built your life around is being quietly reshaped by something you didn't choose, let that fear do one thing for you before it does anything else. Let it be the moment you decide to stop hiding inside the mechanical parts of your work and start building, deliberately, the human parts nothing else can replace. Not next year. Not when it feels safer. Now, while you still have the time to build it on your own terms instead of someone else's timeline. The people who come out of this decade stronger will not be the ones who were never touched by any of it. Almost everyone will be touched by it in some way. They will be the ones who used the disruption as the reason to finally become someone the disruption could not reach. Wake up to what's actually happening. Wake up to what's actually valuable. Wake up to the parts of you that were never for sale and were never for replacing. No matter how good the machines get, they can automate your job. Start building the version of you they cannot automate. One honest decision, one deepened relationship, one hard-earned piece of judgment at a time.